All right, so let's talk about detecting estrus or standing heat. Probably need to observe them, as I said, somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, early morning and evening. Sometimes people that are just beginning an AI program or an estrus synchronization program are a little bit maybe tepid about it. Well, I'm not sure my cows are cycling in order to respond to the drugs. If you've got any doubts that your heifers or your cows are in a naturally occurring heat cycle, that they're all pubertal or heifers are pubertal or that cows are having cycles and they're in good enough body condition to have heat cycles, just go out and watch them for about 2 or 3 or 4 days. In a naturally cycling herd of cattle, you ought to see about 5% of them every day in standing heat. So that'll tell you, if you go out after 3 or 4 days and you've only detected 1 or 2% every day, then you might have a little more work to do as far as managing your cows and feeding them and getting them ready to respond to these drugs, okay? So it's going to take about 21 days if we had a herd of non-synchronized cows to observe heat and naturally detect heat in the whole herd, okay, to get through the whole bunch. Observation, visual observation is a must. We will talk about heat detection aids later on, but really you need to get out there and look at them morning and evening. We see cattle riding each other. Usually we say it's the one on the bottom that we know for sure is in heat if she's standing hard and will allow another cow to mount her. If another cow, for instance, tries to jump her and she just stands there for a minute and turns out, I'm going to really keep watching her. She may not quite be coming in or she may be going out. You really don't know. But we like the one that stands and takes a firm ride. We want to also look at the vulva. I like to see clear mucus coming out of it. That's sometimes a good indication of heat. Not all cows that are in heat will show that. But a lot of times the vulva will become slightly swollen, would be another sign that the cow's in heat. We see tail heads with roughed up hair on them. That would be another sign. We look along her flanks. If they're muddy and rough from other animals jumping on her with muddy hooves and stuff, that can also be a sign of heat. So there are some aids to assist with heat detection. We'll look at some of these a little bit later. This is not a substitute for getting out there and watching the cow, but they are aids. KAMAR patch is one. Tail paint or tail chalk would be another one. There is a computerized system called the Heat Watch system where we can glue electric monitors to the tail head of the cow. Every time she is mounted by another cow, it sends a message to a transponder which will record the time of day she took a ride, how long she took a ride, and some other information, and then that transponder will send that information to a computer. These things do have a range over which they don't transmit. So I guess you could say your computer has to be fairly close to the cows, okay? Another aid would be what we call Gomer animals or Gomer bulls. This would basically be a bull that's fitted with a special chin ball marker, we call them, which basically fits around his neck and chin, and when he mounts another cow, it paints her with special paint. These are probably not as common as they used to be. It takes money to create a Gomer bull. You either have to have them surgically altered one of two ways. You either have to have a penile deviation out the side, where when he gets an erection, it points out to the side and he never actually penetrates the cow. There is another surgical procedure we could use called just a vasectomized bull, where the spermatic cords are either crushed or surgically altered. But that's another option. But with estrus detection, the way we've got it and the tools we have for synchronization, I don't think Gomer animals are as common as we used to maybe see them. Anyway, here's a picture of a bull fitted with one of those chin ball markers. You can see the bottom part of this device is kind of like a ballpoint pen, and when he jumps that cow and drags his chin off her, he'll mark her up pretty good. The KAMAR heat patches, we'll look at some of these later outside, but you can see the one on the left is non-activated. We glue these up on the tail head with glue, back tag glue or whatever. You can see the one in the middle is just maybe starting to come into heat, and then I would say the one on the right is sure enough indicator of good standing heat. Any of these, whether they're KAMAR patches or the estrus alert patches, they kind of have limitations. If you've got a lot of brush in your pastures, these don't really work too good. They can rub them on brush and stuff like that. So you're either going to have to put them in traps or pens or something that, if you've got a ranch that has any brush on it really at all. The other thing that's a little bit newer maybe than the KAMARs are what we call these Estrus alert patches. They kind of have, you peel them off like a, maybe kind of like a stamp, and it's got adhesive on the back. We'll demonstrate how to put one of those on later, maybe some little tricks that we use to make sure they stay on. Basically, it's, I guess the analogy would be like a lottery ticket. You know, the silver there in the middle is non-activated after the cow has been ridden and taken several rides by other animals. That silver part rubs off and you get a color change. It's usually either pink or green or something like that. There's a picture of a pen full of heifers on an AI project, and you can see that almost all of them are rubbed off and ready to breed. They're mounting each other. They're resting their heads on each other. A lot of times that head resting is a good sign of heat as well. I would caution you not to check heat in pens this crowded. Typically, if an animal's that crowded up, they'll get ridden by other animals if they're not even in heat. These heifers were actually being brought into AI. That's why they're all ready in that picture. But I would never crowd them up this much if I was just using patches and trying to check heat. They're too crowded. There's another picture. Those heifers were all brought into that pen, and they've all got pink Estrus alert tags, and they're ready to make a trip down the chute and get bred. Well, I guess we checked them that morning. We're actually going to sort them off into another pen and get them bred that afternoon. There's a tail paint chalk. Typically you'll just put that kind of in a long line down her tail. Hopefully put a lot of paint on there, so if it does get smeared around, it's got a chance to smear. You can see that's kind of smeared around and the hair's ruffled up and all that, okay? There she is, really painted up, okay? This is a little cartoon of the heat watch system I mentioned. Basically, we glue those patches, those electronic patches on the cow, and they've got an electronic transmitter, sends it to the receiver there somewhere between the cow and the barn or house or wherever the computer is, and your computer will read that. The patch will reach up to 1/4 mile to your receiver. Your receiver probably needs to be within 500 feet or so of your computer. They say these don't go through metal buildings real well, but